sir. Is it working?
Maybe.
What's this? Hello? Do you have the clicker?
I'll get it for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So this is for the room, the normal
Yep.
one. This one is for YouTube streaming.
For what?
YouTube streaming.
Oh, okay. Do I need to put it on me? Does it have a hook?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already on. So
Yay for
I don't know
YouTube
how it
streaming.
works on YouTube. So if you ever wanted to use it,
Take it off and hide it.
I guess, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Jennifer knows how to work it, so she's trying
Okay.
to everything.
Okay. Or whatever.
I'm pretty sure she knows how.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yep, I just need the clicker for my. Oh, whoops, there's no trash bag in there.
That goes into your computer.
Oh, okay. Let's make sure it works. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Yep. Great, thank you. Hello. Okay, sorry, I'm struggling up here. I think so. I have them at home. Hello, everybody. It's good to see everybody tonight. Can everybody hear okay? I've got all kinds of microphones and things going on. It's great to have everybody here tonight. I am always really happy to be able to come to Bible study on Wednesday nights. I don't know if I mentioned last time, I've got kind of a crazy class this year in 6th grade science. And so I've got my last hour, and there's one little boy in there who just struggles with his behavior a lot. And he's just a lot, and he really struggles. And so we kind of go back and forth sometimes. And yesterday, I think he was like, I told him to do something anyway. He flopped down on his chair, and he's like, "You're one of those characters from Matilda." And if you've ever seen Matilda, there's Miss Honey, who is sweet and kind and gentle. And then there's a character called Miss Trunchbull, who is mean and has a big old wart on her face and sticks kids in the closet with the spiky things. And so I'm just going to go with he was telling me I was Miss Honey, but I kind of doubt that's what he meant at the time. So anyway, it's always exciting in 6th grade science this year. Well, okay, so we are continuing in our lesson series on leading a life of balance. And my lesson tonight is faith versus sight. Our key verse tonight is going to be 2 Corinthians 5:7, which says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." I was going to do a blindfold activity. I was going to have Maddie come up here, and I was going to blindfold her and put some things in her way and have her listen to my voice, like take 3 steps forward, 2 steps to the left. But I decided we don't have time to do that. And so just picture that in your head, okay? I guided her towards me with my voice. So in life, though, it can feel like, just like somebody doing that, as if we're walking in the dark. We can't see what's in the future, and we don't know what obstacles lie ahead. But just as somebody would trust, she would have trusted in my voice and followed my direction, even though she couldn't see anything. We are called to trust God's voice, which is found in His Word. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 5:7, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." So that's where we're going to start tonight. So can you see what's ahead? So think about walking in complete darkness. Have any of you guys ever been to a cave? I grew up in Winoka, and it's not far from, did we just lose battery? It quit.
Okay, I'll go get you some.
Okay, thank you. Anyway, I grew up in Winoka, which is near Freedom, which they have the Alabaster Caverns. And so we would always go as a field trip or whatever. And when you go down in there, when you get about halfway, they turn the lights off. And it is completely dark, okay? Darker than you can imagine. And so when I think of if I had to go through life or navigate through the rest of that cave without any light coming on, it would be terrible. I would fall off into the, abyss or end up, with bats all over me. And so when we think of that, that is what we need to think of, is just as our physical sight can fail us in the dark, we all have spiritual sight, which is our human understanding and reliance on circumstances. Just keep talking. Okay. And that often fails us in life's challenges. So the Bible calls us to rely on a different guide, which is faith. When we're talking about the verse that I read, you're not distracting me at all. We walk by faith and not by sight. Walk is referring to how we live our lives. Whew. Thank you. Good job. I tried. I can't clip it anywhere. It's bothering me. So the walk is referring to how we live our lives, and sight refers to what is temporary or visible and comfortable. Okay? So let's define faith and sight. I know a lot of us have heard this all of our lives and studied it, but it's always good to go back over and refresh our knowledge of the definition. So faith is trusting God's character and promises, even when the physical evidence is unconvincing, uncertain, or frightening. Biblical faith is a firm assurance of what we hope for and a conviction about realities that we cannot see. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Okay, so we have faith, definition, and then the definition of sight would be relying on what is physically seen and understood, using only human reason and the senses. This perspective is limited by temporary circumstances and can easily lead to anxiety and doubt. And then Hebrews 11:6 says, and without faith it is impossible to please him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. I really like the last part of that sight where it says that if we only trust our sight as we go through life's challenges, that it is going to definitely lead to anxiety and doubt. I know there's a lot of anxiety. Am I saying that right? Anxiety? It sounds weird to me. Anxiety in the world today. It's just really rampant. And so I think part of that is we do tend to be off balance in in the way we're going through life with, are we leaning on our faith and are we listening to God's word? Are we going that route, or are we just relying on our sight and physical circumstances and things that we can see and touch? So now we're going to talk about some biblical examples of faith. Here are just three. There are more, and so you be thinking of some more in your head if you want, that you maybe could give us an example of. So Abraham, he left his home for an unknown land, trusting God's promise of a nation, and you find that in Genesis 12. So that's just one of the first times when Abraham had to really have faith. So God basically told him, just let's go. You're going to go somewhere. We're going to go far away, and I'm going to make the father of a great nation. Who can tell me of something else with Abraham that required him to ignore or to not rely on what was in front of him and rely on his faith in what God had told him? What's something else in Abraham's life? Yes, the sacrifice of Isaac. So Isaac was his son that he had longed for many years, and God told him to go take him up on the mountain and sacrifice him, kill him. Okay? And so we tend to think, well, God saved him at the last minute. But if you put yourself in that situation, he had to tell Isaac, let's go. He had to gather everything. They walked up the mountain. He had to make the altar. He had to, put him up there. And so all during that time, his human reasoning and senses were telling him, this is not right. This is not right. What is going on? What is God doing? Why would he do this? But Abraham had the faith and to know that God was going to deliver or to keep his promise somehow. And then the story goes that he was stopped at the last minute and did not have to sacrifice Isaac. So that would have taken, if you think of your children and God asking you to do that would have been really hard. You would have had to have faith. What's another one? Kind of before that, I think of another one. When the physical around him, if he had just kept his sights on the physical, he would have been like, God promised us this, but it's not going to happen.
Just having Isaac in the first place.
Yes, yes. So when God had told him, you and Sarah are going to have a baby, and then they got older and older, and the story where Sarah laughed because she was past childbearing age. So they could have lost faith. They could have, I'm sure they doubted some, but in the end, they did trust in God and they put their faith in God. Okay, Moses in the Red Sea. So the Israelites were trapped between Pharaoh's army and the sea. By sight, they were doomed, but by faith, they walked on dry ground. And this story is in Exodus 1 through 4. I'm kind of out of order there. So you can imagine they had finally been delivered. They had gotten out of Egypt. They were racing away. They were free, but they knew the army was behind them, and they come upon the Red Sea. And they're like, well, here we are. What are we going to do? We can't get across. We're trapped. Okay? And so they had to have faith that God was going to deliver them, and he did by parting the Red Sea. And then Noah, he built a massive ark based on God's warning of a flood, a concept that was completely unseen and heard of at the time. So there had been nothing like that before. There was no reason for anybody to build an ark or anybody to build anything like that. And so it was a totally unheard of thing for God to ask him to do this. But he did put his faith in God. Would somebody read Hebrews 11:7 for me?
By faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith.
Okay. I think of this, it took him what, how many years? About 100 years? Was that about 100 years to build the ark? You can imagine as he went on and on, he was thinking, okay, when's this going to happen? Is this going to happen? A lot of times if we don't get an answer from God within a month or 2 months, we're like, God's not listening to us, or God must not care. Imagine, waiting an entire year and then more when you consider all the other events that happened. And so we do need to remember that our timing is not God's timing. Who can tell me, so did anybody think of somebody in the New Testament or somebody else where faith was a very important thing, or where what they saw was different than what their faith came to be? Can anybody think of anybody in the New Testament? Who said that? Paul, yes. Stephen. Who? Mary. Yeah, those are all, yes. Okay, Mary, that's not how Mary imagined her life, her married life beginning, or her life to go, I'm sure. Okay, there were times where Paul was in prison and beaten and all of those horrible things. He had to have faith that God's promises were more important, and that in the long run, that was going to be what triumphed. Stephen, okay? Stephen, as he was laying there being stoned, I'm sure that, he really had to draw on his faith, and he knew that, that God was going to take care of him one way or the other. Good, very good. Any others on that? Peter. Yes, good. Peter walking on the water. Yep. He started, and I feel like that's a lot of us. He started, and then he took his eyes off. And we can do that a lot. We can be like, I really do have faith, but then time goes by or some kind of circumstance happens, and we're like, well, I can't see an end to this. Maybe somebody gets sick or has a health issue or there's financial trouble. And you're like, I do not see God in this. I cannot see what's going to happen. I can't tell what's going to happen in the future. And so it can be discouraging, and it can cause anxiety and doubt. And that's what Satan wants. But God reminds us that we need to have faith. Faith over sight. Okay, so faith over sight, or sight versus faith, is a choice. Just like all of the godly characteristics that we are to practice, choosing to have faith over just living with sight is a choice that we make daily. It's not always easy, especially if something is really stressful happening in your life. It's not always easy, but it is a choice. So here are just a few scenarios. So scenario one, you lose your job, okay? You lose your job. I have not personally ever lost my job. I think Tracy did. There was a company that they no longer needed him when we were much younger. And that is very stressful, you know, especially, I mean, if you have children or even if you don't have children, you don't know how you're going to pay your rent. How are you going to pay for all of the things that you need, okay? So if you're only going by sight, then you have panic, worry, fear, okay, stress about the future, all of those things. And not that you're not going to feel some concern, but we do know that God is going to take care of us in our needs. If you chose faith, you could pray. You would be praying for guidance and trusting that God will provide, using the opportunity to seek His will. Okay, scenario number 2, a relationship is broken. How many of you have ever had a relationship broken? Whether it's family, friends, okay? It happens, unfortunately. And when a relationship is broken, for whatever reason, if you only lean on sight, then you can be consumed with angerness. You can be consumed with bitterness towards that person or maybe just the situation. You can allow hurt feelings to dominate your world. You can dwell on it. It can become what you focus on. And that is easy to do because when we have broken relationships, there's usually hurt that comes along with it. But if we choose faith, then we can be praying for healing, forgiving the other person, trusting God with the outcome, okay? And that brings a lot of relief to a person. That gets rid of a lot of anxiety when you can just turn all of that over to God and let any anger, bitterness go. Any comments on any of that or anything we've talked about so far?
The second one, that choosing the forgiveness and letting it go is actually less stressful than hanging on to the anger and the bitterness.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do that and it's just all this inner turmoil and strife over something you can't control.
Yes.
You can't control the other person.
Right.
All you can do is control your own feelings. And my experience has been when you choose to forgive, whether it's yourself, you forgive yourself for acting how you did, or you forgive the other person, there's a sense of huge relief involved in that.
Absolutely.
And then you can go on living your life for God.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I was going to. So she was saying that whenever you release, if you hold in that anger and bitterness, it's actually harder for you than it is to forgive and release it. Because when you hang on to that, you're always stirred up about it. You always have, maybe you're angry all the time, and you can't control other people, right? You can't control how somebody else is going to act. You can't control what somebody else is going to say about you or do. You can't control any of that. And so if you choose to hold on to that, as opposed to choosing to forgive, to turn it over to God, to ask God for healing, however that looks, healing in the situation, then it's a much easier path, which would make sense because God's ways are always the easier path. They're always going to lead eventually to happiness and fulfillment. Very good. Good comment. And then the last scenario that I have on there is an answered prayer isn't what you expected. So say your life doesn't look exactly like you thought it would. Okay, she talked about Mary. Mary did not, I'm sure she loved Joseph and got engaged and thought, well, we're going to start our life together. And but then all of a sudden an angel came to her and she was pregnant. Okay, And so I am sure that if she had not been a woman of faith, if she had not chosen faith, that could have really caused her, a lot of extreme anxiety and stress with everything that came along with that. But she chose to have faith. It says she did ponder things in her heart, but she still chose to have faith. When things don't go our way, when God doesn't answer our prayers the way we want, we definitely can feel disappointed. We can feel abandoned by God. People that lose children, or people that lose a spouse, or people that have had a loved one that was sick for a long time and then they pass away, or for whatever. That can be a really, really difficult time to choose faith, because they're like, I prayed and I prayed, for this to have a different outcome. And people can feel abandoned by God. And we just need to remember to try to choose faith and trust that God's ultimate plan, believing that He does know what's best for us, and looking for His purpose in the outcome. No matter what the outcome is, we can look for a purpose. We can look for a new purpose that He might be trying to teach us. Romans 8:28. Would somebody read that for me, please?
And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose.
So He tells us that all things will work for the good. It just may not be exactly the way that we thought it was going to be. Okay? Exercising our faith. So how can we exercise our faith? First of all, there are four things here. Pray about everything. Instead of trying to solve every problem on your own, bring all your needs and fears to God. I know there are times when I will have gone through the day, or maybe even a couple of days, and I'm like, man, I haven't really prayed to God very much. And, or I haven't read my Bible like I should. And that definitely, when I go back to that, it automatically brings a peace and a calm, and it lowers those anxieties that I might have about a situation. So we need to remember to definitely pray about everything. We need to remember to meditate on Scripture. So this is how we hear God's voice, is through His Word. And we can read the Bible from the time we are old enough to read until we could be 100. And we're going to, and I don't know if it was who it was that was talking about this, we're going to be reading it, and we're going to get something from it every time we read it, whether it's something we've read over and over, because of our life experiences, because of the things we've gone through. Every time we read the Bible, we are going to be hearing God's words to us. Practicing gratitude. Make a habit of thanking God for the ways that He's working, even in unseen circumstances. This shifts your focus from what is wrong to what is right. So, how many of you have ever told your children you need an attitude adjustment? Okay. Not recently, but maybe. Your mom says that to you all the time. Yes. It's because moms know. Moms know. Exactly. And so sometimes we just need to adjust or to switch our thinking. And it can really make a difference. And when we are grateful for the things in our lives that God has given us, our blessings, the relationships that we have, the avenue of prayer, the fact that He gave us the Bible, then when we do that, it is going to shift our focus from that to faith, to things that we are thankful for. And then share your story is up there. Encourage others and reinforce your own belief by sharing God's faithfulness. This is one that I think that we should do more often, is share our stories with each other. I think that's why we need to be in each other's homes. That's why I really like the e-groups. I've really gotten to know some of the people in ours even closer than we would have just by coming to church. So I really just being in, class together at church. And so we need to be in each other's homes and sharing our stories with each other and leaning on each other, because somebody may have a story of faith that would really encourage you, and you may have one that you don't realize might really encourage someone else. So I encourage you guys to do those things. And then there was one more that I wanted to talk about, is to fast from distractions. Fast from distractions. So, excuse me, I was reading this and it said that practice fasting from things that consume our attention. And that might be different for different people. I know for a lot of people, social media can consume our attention. It can lead us down a rabbit hole. I think I maybe mentioned that my first time. I don't know, I was watching something, just scrolling last night, and then they was talking about this actress, and the next thing you know, I'm finding out that what she did as a kid, and anyway, and then I'm like, I don't even care. Why am I? Yeah, I don't even care. And so, it can consume you. You can be like, oh, okay. And so we need fasting from that. And that is definitely something that I am going to try to do. I'm going to try to fast from social media for a set amount of time. And I've also known it brings me a lot of peace, because you can see this and you just get anxious about it, or, oh, this and that. But, when we were growing up, I didn't know everything that Barbara thought. And so it was okay.
There's a lot of Barbaras.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I should have picked
A different name. Jennifer. I didn't know what Jennifer thought, so it didn't, but no. I do want to know what any Barbara thinks if they want to say something tonight. I promise. So anyway, if we leave room, if we fast from distractions, then we're leaving a quiet space in our mind for God's voice, for us to hear God's voice, for us to hear the Spirit, for us to listen to His word. Okay? Moving on to slide 7. Let's discuss. Okay, what area of your life currently makes it hardest to walk by faith? What does taking a step of faith look like for you this week? And how has God been faithful in your life even when you couldn't see His plan? So maybe it's difficult to walk by faith right now because of your finances, or because of a relationship, or because of your health or somebody else's health. Think of a time when your human understanding contradicted God's promise. How did you resolve the inner conflict? Anybody want to? That's a deep question. Think of a time when your human understanding contradicted God's promise. How did you resolve the inner conflict? So I'll give you an example. Years ago, when Sydney was about 11 or 12, she got a really, really bad infection in her sinuses that it was MRSA. And it was really bad. She went from okay to super sick within hours. And she was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And her face swelled up really huge because that MRSA infection was in there. And they're like, it's really close to the brain. And she'll never forgive me because the entire youth group came up and stood around her in the bed. And her face she was not happy. She's like, do not ever, if you know Sydney, they all stood around her, and yeah, it's like, anyway, she was like, her face is all swollen, and she's laying there, like, thanks a lot. Anyway, it was very stressful. It hadn't been too long after my dad had passed away, and so she was there, and they kept trying things, and they put her on the strongest antibiotic there was, and we didn't know if it was going to work yet. And so that was and I felt myself panicking and just praying and being so consumed with worry and I lost my train of thought. So I was consumed with worry, and then I just had to have faith. So the doctor said, I'm like, Dr. Lindsay, is she going to be okay? Tell me, is she going to be okay? Is this going to work? Is it going to go away? Is she going to be okay? And he was like, I can't tell you that. It's going to be okay. And so that was a time where I really, really had to draw on my faith, because I didn't know what was going to happen. Luckily, the infection did get under control, and obviously she's fine. But that was a time where what was happening in front of me, was very difficult, and I had to lean on my faith. Is there anything that you can think of in your life that you want to share?
Hearing Hollis whimper, when you think about all of us ladies who have children, there's an element of faith to the pregnancy. Even though the doctor can do all these tests and tell you, they look fine, it's a normal pregnancy. For me, there was always this little inkling of, but there could be something we're not seeing. And so just having faith that God's going to give you a healthy baby.
Right.
That's a long 9 months.
That's true. That's a very good point. Yeah, when you become pregnant and you have 9 months and you are having faith, that baby will be okay and be healthy. And so, yeah, that's a good point. Okay, let's go on before I run out of time. Did anybody have any other comments they wanted to say? Okay, so choose to walk in faith and not just depend on sight. So recap, walking by faith is a choice to rely on God's character, not our circumstances. So challenge for you this week, choose faith over sight in one small area of your life. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope." Okay, so for just the last 3.5 minutes, I know this says it's for like teens, but I thought this was a really good video. So will somebody turn the lights off for me? So I'm just going to end with this recap of walking by faith. Okay. Do you know why if the sound's not working, it's okay. Yeah.
Like really dark? So dark you can't see your hand in front of your face? It's kind of scary, right?
Yeah.
You don't know where you're going, what's in front of you, or if you're about to trip over something. But what if someone who can see perfectly took your hand?
Maddie to the rescue. Press play again. Try it.
You could always try putting the captions on. Closed captions, and then we could read it too.
If I put hang on. If I put this down here, will it work?
Yeah, you could do that.
Let's try this, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, let's see if this works.
Walking in the dark, like really dark, so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's kind of scary, right? You don't know where you're going, what's in front of you, or if you're about to trip over something. But what if someone who can see perfectly took your hand and says, "Trust me, I'll guide you." That's kind of what it means to walk by faith, not by sight. We are always encouraged. We know that while we're
Okay, I am sorry about the sound. I'm going to have faith that you guys heard that. And that you took something away from that. So I thought that was a very good point. Anyway, if you guys, thank you for coming tonight, and I hope you have a good week. And we're dismissed.